Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into a concept we all, well, think we understand, but it turns out to be far more complex, more compelling than just seeing the glass half full. We're talking about optimism. What exactly is optimism beyond just a positive outlook? How does it actually shape our lives?
Yeah.
From our personal decisions right up to navigating these big global challenges.
Yeah.
And can it really help us find our way in a world that, let's face it, often feels increasingly uncertain?
It's a huge question.
It is. Our mission today is really to give you a shortcut to understanding this powerful force and maybe even a new way to think about your own outlook.
Definitely. And we've really dug into an incredible stack of sources here, everything from psychological studies, historical accounts, to some pretty deep philosophical debates.
Okay.
So we're going to try and unpack its various definitions, look at the profound benefits, but also some maybe hidden pitfalls.
Right, pitfalls too.
Yeah, absolutely. And uncover how it might just be the key to imagining, and then, crucially, creating a better future.
Okay, so let's start there. When we say someone is an optimist, what do we really mean? Is it just like a personality trait, or is there something more nuanced going on?
Well, it's used in so many different ways in everyday conversation, doesn't it? But psychologists, they've given it some very specific definitions.
Okay.
One is what they call unrealistic optimism, or sometimes positive illusions.
Positive illusions. Sounds a bit worrying.
It can be. This is that consistent human tendency we all seem to have to overestimate our chances of good things happening. You know, graduating college, hitting career milestones, getting married. Right. And importantly, to underestimate the negative ones, things like divorce, illness, car crashes, even something like radon contamination in our homes. We just don't think it'll happen to us.
That's fascinating. So while it might make us feel good day to day, this unrealistic optimism could actually be, well, dangerous.
It certainly can set you up for disappointment or worse.
But isn't there any benefit to having a slightly rose-tinted view? Or is it always a negative trait in this context?
You've hit on a critical point there. Take smokers, for example. Studies show they often genuinely underestimate their lung cancer risk.
Right.
And at the same time, they overestimate their ability to quit. They think, oh, I can give up whenever I like.
We've all heard that one.
Exactly. And this kind of optimism can even hinder things like informed consent in medical contexts, which is actually a pretty serious issue.
Wow, okay.
We also see the planning fallacy here. That's where optimists find it genuinely difficult to imagine anything impeding their progress.
Leading to lateness.
Leading to that perpetual lateness we all know too well.
Yeah.
They just don't factor in the potential bumps in the road.
Okay, so the big takeaway here isn't just optimism is good, it's that there are different kinds. And knowing the difference between this sort of blind hope and a more grounded expectation seems crucial, really, for navigating our own lives effectively, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it's key. And that leads us nicely to another important definition: dispositional optimism.
Dispositional.
Yeah, this was famously studied by Michael Shire and Charles Carver. This refers more to a general expectation that good things will happen. It's more like an ingrained personal trait.
So less about specific events, more of a general outlook.
Exactly. It's measured by surveys, things like the life orientation test, with statements such as, "In uncertain times, I usually expect the best."
Ah, okay.
Crucially, this isn't about ignoring problems. It's really about how you approach them when they arise.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about being a Pollyanna then, is it? Just blindly positive about everything.
No, not at all.
I was really struck by the Helen Keller example we came across in the research. After losing both sight and hearing, she wrote, "Once I knew only darkness and stillness. Now I know hope and joy."
Powerful, isn't it?
It really is. That suggests something far deeper than just, ignoring the bad stuff. It sounds like a choice, almost, to find joy even in really profound adversity.
It certainly does, and the research backs this up. While this dispositional optimism doesn't necessarily improve outcomes that are completely beyond your control, it can't stop bad things happening. It makes you better able to deal with them.
How so?
You cope better. You don't become as overwhelmed by stress. Optimists, in this sense, tend to be problem solvers.
Okay.
They're often quicker to accept reality if it truly can't be altered, and then they move on. They don't get stuck as easily.
All right, they adapt.
Exactly. And there are other benefits, too. They also tend to persist more in things like education and employment, and they actually work harder at relationships.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, which
Right.
often leads to more enduring connections. So it has tangible benefits.
Okay, so if optimism, this dispositional kind, have all these benefits, Why does it feel like we're living in a time of such widespread pessimism? You even hear the word doomerism thrown around.
It does feel that way sometimes.
Our source author mentioned his own personal journey, rejecting that sort of one-day-at-a-time advice after profound loss and concluding that optimism was really the only stance worth taking. Yet that general feeling of things going downhill seems so widespread. Why is that?
Well, this widespread gloom, this sort of malaise, can often be linked to a phenomenon sociologists call anomie.
Anomie.
Yeah, it's a sense of profound dislocation, a feeling of normlessness or societal breakdown.
And we see examples of this.
We do, quite powerfully in some places. In Japan, for instance, there are over 1 million working-age adults known as hikikomori.
Yes, the social recluses.
Exactly. It's a phenomenon so prevalent the government actually recognizes it, and it's often linked to economic stagnation, a feeling of hopelessness about the future.
Oh.
And similarly, you look at South Korea, there's the Sampo generation.
Sampo?
Yeah, it refers to giving up 3 things: dating, marriage, and children, often because of challenging economic prospects. A sense that those things are just out of reach.
That's incredibly bleak. And we also see this manifesting in things like climate anxiety, right? With many young people questioning whether it's even ethical to have children anymore.
Definitely.
I remember reading about the Inek mother, Nadia Mike, whose brother had to flee wildfires, and she talked about her struggle to hold promise for her kids in the face of these huge environmental shifts.
It's a profound challenge. And these anxieties, whether they're climate-related or demographic, often stem from our fundamental human difficulty predicting what's next.
We're not very good at it, are we?
Well, frankly, history is absolutely littered with examples of how often even the smartest experts get it spectacularly wrong.
Like what?
Well, take Paul and Ann Ehrlich's 1968 book, The Population Bomb. Remember that? It predicted widespread famine due to massive population growth.
Right, I remember the fear around that.
But it just hasn't happened. Instead, what we've seen is that as countries industrialize, and especially as women gain education and employment, birth rates fall dramatically.
So the opposite happened.
Pretty much. In South Korea, for instance, the average woman had 6 children back in 1960. Today, it's less than 1, about 0.78.
Wow, that's a huge shift.
It is. And it suggests our next big demographic problem might actually be too few people in many parts of the world, not too many.
And it's not just population predictions we get wrong. We've had massive economic crises, like the long-term capital management collapse back in 1998. You had Nobel laureates involved there, and they still failed to predict market behavior.
Exactly. That was a classic case. They're what one source called their Panglossian collective delusion, this sort of blind belief that everything would just work out fine.
Panglossian, like Voltaire's character.
Precisely. That naive optimism. Their faith in their sophisticated models led to absolutely catastrophic losses. And it really mirrored, in some ways, what we saw again in the 2008 financial crisis.
Right.
So these examples, they powerfully highlight the dangers of overconfidence, that illusion of control we sometimes fall prey to.
Okay, so if prediction is so incredibly hard, maybe even impossible sometimes, how do we prepare for the future? How do we find a useful kind of optimism, not that dangerous Panglossian kind?
Well, this brings us to a really fascinating concept called counterfactuals.
Counterfactuals. Thinking about what didn't happen.
Exactly. Thinking about the way things weren't to gain fresh perspectives on the way things are now.
Give me an example.
Okay, think about the Cold War. Nuclear war between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. At many points, it seemed almost inevitable, didn't it?
Terrifyingly so, yeah.
But it didn't happen. Now, thinking about why it didn't happen, the near misses, the decisions made highlights that history isn't predetermined.
It's not just a straight line.
Not at all. Individual decisions, social movements, political choices, they all create this kind of expanding web of knock-on effects. There's that incredible story of Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, the Soviet officer who, back in 1983, decided not to escalate after a false alarm from their warning systems.
Right, he basically saved the world.
Arguably, yes. It's a powerful, chilling example of how one individual choice can literally change the possible world we end up living in.
That's actually really empowering to think about, isn't it? That these pivotal moments weren't inevitable, but they were shaped by individual choices, by actions.
It is.
So if the future isn't fixed, if it's this branching path, how do we even begin to think about it constructively? Right. Our imaginations must be key here.
Absolutely crucial. We don't just passively remember the past. Our brains actively construct future scenarios using bits and pieces of those memories.
Like building blocks for the future.
Sort of, yeah. And that's where this philosophical concept of possible worlds becomes really central.
Possible worlds. Okay, tell me more.
Well, think of it like this. Every decision you make, every fork in the road in history, opens up a slightly different potential version of reality, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
The philosopher Gottfried Leibniz, centuries ago, took this idea and proposed something quite bold. He suggested that our world is literally the best of all possible worlds.
The best. Chosen by God.
That was his idea, yeah. Chosen by God from infinite possibilities. It was his theological explanation for why there's suffering and evil. Even with the bad stuff, this was somehow the optimal overall plan.
Sounds a bit hard to swallow today.
Well, exactly. And Voltaire, through his satirical character Dr. Pangloss in Candide, just savagely mocked this whole idea.
Ah, Pangloss again.
Yes, Pangloss is facing endless calamities, earthquakes, torture, shipwrecks, you name it. And through it all, he just keeps insisting all is for the best in this best of all possible worlds.
Right, completely detached from reality.
Totally. And Voltaire's biting takeaway, in contrast, was much more pragmatic. We must cultivate our garden. Meaning, focus on what's actually under our control, the small patch we can influence, rather than assuming some grand, perfect, divine plan is unfolding whether we act or not.
Okay, that makes more sense. Focus on the practical.
Right. And the crucial insight from this whole philosophical debate, I think, and the really useful bit for us today, is that we shouldn't strive for some impossible, perfect world.
Because that leads to inaction or delusion.
Exactly. Instead, we should aim for the best possible world, given the real constraints we face. That perspective is immensely powerful because it's not about blind faith. It's grounded.
And that's why we use this possible worlds thinking in practical ways.
Precisely. It's exactly why we use scenarios, simulations, stories, all forms of exploring possible worlds to do things like forecast the weather, try to keep banks safe, test new medicines, design safer cars. We're constantly simulating possibilities.
And you see this reflected in popular culture all the time now, don't you? All the multiverses, parallel worlds, alternate timelines in films and books.
Absolutely. It's like our collective imagination is constantly playing with what if, exploring those branching paths.
Weather forecasting is actually a fantastic example of applying this possible worlds thinking in a really concrete way.
It really is. They've moved from, believe it or not, human computers doing calculations by hand way back when, to these incredibly powerful supercomputers running what's called ensemble forecasts.
Ensemble forecast.
Yeah, they run the weather models not just once, but repeatedly, dozens or even hundreds of times, each time tweaking the starting conditions just slightly.
Why do they do that?
To map the range of possibilities. It gives them a probability distribution, showing not just the most likely forecast, but also the potential variations, the uncertainty. It's pure possible worlds thinking.
That's brilliant.
It is. But even these incredibly sophisticated models have their limits, especially now.
How so?
Well, take the unprecedented Antarctic sea ice failure we saw in 2023, just a massive, unexpected loss of ice.
I remember reading about that. It was shocking.
It was, and standard climate models predicted an event like that might occur maybe once in 2.7 million years.
2.7 million years. But it happened.
But it happened. And this is a stark reminder, really, that even our best models are struggling to keep up. They might be inadequate for our rapidly changing climate, a climate that human activity has drastically altered, pushing us outside the bounds of past experience.
So the models are based on a world that doesn't quite exist anymore.
In some ways, yes. The system itself is changing. So if even the experts running these complex models are often wrong, or at least facing huge uncertainties, who is good at predicting? Is it just pure luck?
Yeah, is anyone actually good at this?
Well, surprisingly, yes, or at least better. Philip Tetlock's groundbreaking research on super forecasters is incredibly illuminating here.
Super forecasters, who are they? People with crystal balls.
Not quite. They're actually ordinary people, often without any specific deep expertise in the thing they're forecasting, like geopolitics or economics.
Really? Ordinary people beat the experts?
Strikingly often, yes. They are consistently more successful at prediction than supposed experts or intelligence analysts with access to classified information.
Oh. What makes them different?
Tetlock describes them using Isaiah Berlin's analogy. They are foxes, not hedgehogs.
Foxes and hedgehogs.
Yeah, hedgehogs know one big thing. They have one big theory that explains everything. Think of pundits with a single overarching worldview.
Okay, I know the type.
Foxes, on the other hand, know many little things. They are less fixed in their thinking, more adaptable. They're willing to subvert their own reasoning, constantly questioning their assumptions, actively seeking out contradictory information, and really taking counterfactuals, those what-ifs, seriously.
So it's about intellectual humility and being open to changing your mind.
Exactly. That's a huge insight. That humility and that mental flexibility often beat rigid expertise when it comes to forecasting uncertain futures.
It makes sense.
It really does. And it's incredibly powerful for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Humility and a willingness to consider what might go wrong or what alternative paths exist, even when you think you're right. That's far more valuable than being rigidly certain.
Yeah.
Tetlock saw this clearly when AI experts who collectively predicted about a 25% chance of human extinction caused by AI by the year 2100 were put in conversation with super forecasters.
Okay, what do the super forecasters predict?
A mere 0.1% chance. Tiny in comparison.
Wow, huge difference. Did they convince each other?
Interestingly, no.
Yeah.
Their views barely converged at all.
Why not?
Because, Tetlock suggests, they were clinging to fundamentally different narratives, different stories about how AI might develop, and they lacked shared concrete evidence for such incredibly long-term outcomes. It was more about belief than data at that point.
So we need better stories, maybe. More nuanced ones.
That seems to be the implication. We need a wider range of narratives, maybe, beyond just the standard fictional tropes of, robot rebellion or instant utopia, more Fox-like thinking about the possibilities.
Okay, so we've talked about forecasting and experts. What about leaders? Political leaders often embrace optimism, don't they? They have to project confidence.
They certainly do, but sometimes that can tip over into that dangerous Panglossianism we mentioned.
Right, that blind optimism.
Yeah. Think of George W. Bush's infamous mission accomplished banner in Iraq very early on.
Premature, to say the least.
Hugely. Or Boris Johnson's rather memorable line about Brexit, urging people to believe in the bin bags as a symbol of national capability.
Right, I remember that.
These moments, you could argue, represent that kind of dangerous overconfidence, maybe coupled with a lack of detailed, realistic planning, just assuming it will all work out.
So what's the alternative for a leader? How do you inspire action without falling into that trap?
Well, there's a great contrast with what the diplomat Christiana Figueres, who was key in the Paris Agreement on climate change, calls stubborn optimism.
Stubborn optimism. I like that.
Me too. It's not passive. It's about clearly envisioning a desired future, like a stable climate, and then actively, relentlessly working to pull that future closer.
So it's goal-oriented and active.
Exactly. It's an optimism that opens possibilities precisely because it drives concrete action rather than just hoping for the best.
Okay, so it seems that kind of Panglossianism, that over-optimism, isn't just a pitfall for politicians. We've seen similar dangers playing out in the tech world too, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. Silicon Valley is practically built on optimism.
The early internet, for example. It promised to revolutionize everything, didn't it? Which led partly to that move fast and break things mentality.
Right. A belief that any disruption was inherently good, leading to progress.
And sometimes that pure uncut optimism, as one source put it, has fueled major failures. Theranos is the obvious cautionary tale.
A classic example, yeah. Where extreme optimism, bordering on deception, proved utterly toxic.
Right. And even the effective altruism movement, which started out very focused on gardening, doing small, measurable good, like distributing mosquito nets.
Very pragmatic, yeah.
Has, for some adherents, seemed to shift towards these vast, almost unfathomable grand plans, like preventing AI extinction centuries from now, which some critics argue embodies a kind of hollow allure of Panglossianism, focusing on distant, perhaps unlikely apocalypses rather than immediate suffering.
It's a real tension, isn't it? The line between productive ambition and, toxic or misplaced optimism can be incredibly fine.
But it's not all negative in tech, surely.
Oh, not at all. Techno-optimism also yields incredible triumphs. We absolutely need it.
Like the COVID vaccines.
Exactly. The rapid development of mRNA vaccines was a stunning achievement. It was a testament to the, quote, unflagging personal optimism of Catalin Carrico, who believed in the technology for decades despite setbacks.
Right. She faced a lot of rejection.
She did. And it was also thanks to the crucial institutional optimism of her backers, the companies and governments that eventually invested heavily in it.
And there are other examples of optimism driving big positive change.
Definitely. Think about the global effort to fix the hole in the ozone layer back in the 80s and 90s.
The Montreal Protocol.
Precisely. That was a huge success story of international cooperation, driven by scientific evidence, yes, but also by a shared belief and optimistic belief that countries could work together and that phasing out harmful chemicals was possible, and it worked.
That's a great example of collective practical optimism. So what does this all mean for us, listening right now? How do we find a productive, grounded optimism in our own lives and for tackling the challenges ahead?
Well, I think it really comes down to embracing meliorism.
Meliorism. That's a new one on me.
It's a philosophical position, basically. It's the belief that humans can make the world better, that progress isn't guaranteed, but it is possible, and that we have the capacity to overcome challenges through effort and ingenuity.
So it's not Panglossian, not saying everything is the best,
No.
but it's saying we can make things better, striving for the best possible world, not waiting for a perfect one.
You've got it. It's an active stance. And on a more personal psychological level, Martin Seligman's work on learned optimism offers a really practical approach.
Learned optimism, so you can learn it.
Apparently so. Seligman argues you can consciously challenge your own pessimistic thoughts through a process he calls disputation.
Disputation, like arguing with yourself.
Kind of, yeah. It's not about ignoring negative events or feelings, but about actively engaging with them, questioning your automatic, often pessimistic explanations for why bad things happen.
So reframing how you explained adversity to yourself.
Exactly. Seeing setbacks as temporary, specific, and maybe partly due to external factors rather than permanent, pervasive, and all your own fault. Seligman argues it's a cognitive skill, a choice you can make and practice.
That sounds useful. Hard, maybe, but useful.
It takes practice, like any skill. But the core idea is that our explanatory style isn't fixed.
Okay, so meliorism for the big picture, learned optimism for the personal. What about these huge collective challenges like climate change or nuclear weapons or the future of AI, things that feel too big for any one person?
Yeah, for those, I think it requires what one source called a shared duty.
A shared duty.
Recognizing that no single person's actions are enough on their own. You can't solve climate change single-handedly.
Like, that can feel overwhelming.
It can. So we need to act, perhaps, without the expectation of direct individual reward or seeing the final outcome ourselves. Acting out of a belief that our collective efforts added together do make a difference, even if we can't see the whole picture.
That sounds like a deep dive into an optimism that really calls us to action, doesn't it? Not just passive hope.
I think that's exactly right.
Wow. We've covered a huge amount of ground today. We've explored this vast landscape of optimism, haven't we? From its psychological roots, those different definitions.
Unrealistic versus dispositional.
Right. And the philosophical debates, Leibniz, Voltaire, Pangloss.
Cultivating our gardens.
Exactly. And then looking at its powerful and sometimes, let's be honest, problematic influence on leaders and technology.
The pitfalls are real.
They are. But the big takeaway for me is that the future isn't fixed. It really is this spectrum of possible worlds. And we absolutely have a hand in creating which one becomes real.
As some of the source material suggested, it can be truly astonishing when you stop and consider that, quote, the universe is astonishingly well tailored to the existence of human life.
That fine-tuning argument.
Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, we are, in fact, in the best of all possible universes. Not in that naive Panglossian way, but in a dynamic, unfolding sense. Perhaps those quantum branches of the multiverse that physicists talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe they can be seen metaphorically as our daily decisions and actions.
The choices we make determining which world we actually end up inhabiting.
It's a compelling thought experiment, isn't it?
It really is. So the conclusion isn't about simply hoping things will get better passively. It's about actively making them better.
Yes.
It's that profound, sometimes quite stern optimism, that stubborn optimism perhaps, that calls us to harness our knowledge, engage our imagination, use that ability to think about possible worlds, and just persist, even when faced with daunting odds.
Well said. It's about agency.
Absolutely.
So perhaps we leave you, the listener, with this thought. What possible world will you strive to bring into being starting today, starting tomorrow, in your own life, in your community? How will you cultivate your own garden, especially in the face of uncertainty?
The choice, as ever, is yours.